Let me introduce myself.
No, sir, they have to, sir, please have a seat for a minute.
Yeah,
Yes, please.
so I'm having a seat for a minute.
Good morning, everyone. Dear Professor Alain Desoulieres, welcome to Nalanda University and the LLS faculty. We are deeply honored by your presence and sincerely grateful that you have joined our vibrant academic community. Your distinguished work and insightful contribution serve as an inspiration to us all, and we eagerly anticipate the fruitful discussion and collaborative endeavors your visit will be fostered. Thank you for enriching our learning experience with your expertise, and we trust that your time with us will be both intellectually rewarding and personally enjoyable. May your time here be marked by inspiring insights and enduring connection. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We are honored to welcome Professor Alain Desoulieres. As an expert in maritime history, he has specialized in the Urdu and Persian language and literature, the essential tools for understanding the natural medieval history of India. His illustrious career spans over various. Professor Desoulieres holds a PhD in Urdu literature and the history of India from Paris Sorbonne University, and has been prominent faculty member at INALCO and the South Asia Department at University Sorbonne Paris. Over the years, he has been associated with renowned research centers including SCS and Ceylon at INALCO. Additionally, he has served as a visiting fellow at Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi and has been a key figure in various conferences and seminars across India. A passionate multilingual speaker of French, Spanish, Portuguese, and other European languages, Professor Desoulieres has translated key works of Urdu literature into French, including the anthology Reflects du Ghazal, 2006, and the works of renowned writer Saadat Hassan Manto. His scholarship spans multiple areas such as the intersection of literature and cinema, historical fiction, and the metaphors of love in classical Urdu poetry. He has also contributed extensively to the field of Urdu historiography, exploring its role in South Asian narratives and its intersection with Indian and Portuguese sources. In the present series of lectures, Professor Alain explored the epic tradition of the European classics to contemporary times. While studying Virgile, we will explore with him the Portuguese epics which reverberate the rendering of India in Portuguese language. We invite you all to join us for an enriching week of lectures, discussion, and intellectual exchange. So, he is a professor of Urdu. So, Baqaul Urdu Zaman, there is a poetess of 20th century, Mumtaz Mirza from Delhi. उनका मिसरा है कि ये किसकी खुशबू ढूंढे है, ये किसका दामा मांगे है, ये किसकी खुशबू ढूंढे है, ये किसका दामा मांगे है, दो चार गुलों की बात नहीं दिल सारा गुलिस्ता मांगे है। तो सर दो चार गुल तो हम गुलदानों से लेके आए हैं सर। So please I welcome Shruti to.
अच्छा। गुलबहार का बहुत शुक्रिया।
I will invite Asma to.
Well, this is impressive. बोलने से पहले हिंदुस्तान की बहार मेरे पास आई है। Are you all of you familiar with Hindi? No? So I just said that before talking to you, I am at the spring season of India. Perhaps you would wonder why I am also interested by Portuguese language. First of all, I would say that part of my youth was in what I would call Iberia, that is both Portuguese and Spain. My first job was teaching linguistics and Roman philology in Toledo University when, oh my God, that was in 1970. By those days, you know, for us students, even when I was very young, Latin and Portuguese were compulsory. Well, so was Mass, by the way. so Mass in Latin. So you may ask, is there a possible link between Latin culture and Indian culture at large? I would say that there is, because from times immemorial, there were links between the Roman Empire and the Indian states, from always. Anyway. Oh, hua kya? Oh, this was asleep. So this is a picture, one of the most famous pictures of the Aeneid by Virgile. Here you see Aeneas, the hero, after the fall of Troy. Troy was a city of nowadays Turkey that was conquered by the Greeks. And for the Roman Empire, Aeneas here was an important character because he was supposed to be the founder of the first Italian state. And Virgil took up the story and made a huge epic poem. Now, about epics. So, I have a problem with epics. There is no epics in my native French. God knows why, but we failed. There is in Spanish, there is in Portuguese, there is in English, not in French. Epics are a long narrative poem on a grand scale about the deeds of warriors, heroes, or godlike heroes, whom we call semi-gods. They are neither human, neither God, totally. In between. Epics incorporate myth. Later on, we shall reflect on the notion of myth, legends, folk tales, and history. Epics are often of national and religious significance in the sense that through the heroes, they personify the history and aspirations of the nation. Often on a grandiose manner. And one thing I would personally add, that in epics, history and politics are always present, even if old, even if very old. Now, some key points again. Well, since we are having picture, remind me that I should also comment those pictures.
In the first slide, we had a beautiful picture, if you can explain that.
Yeah, later on. Some key points. Epics are first a poetic and musical long oral narrative. And there is a para here that I wrote yesterday, and I erased it just by bad maneuver. So here I would say that epics is primarily, like, by the way, all literature, oral literature first. Oral literature is always first. It explains how it circulates so well. And it is poetic. What does poetic means? In Greek, poiesis means creative, creation. Actually, the poetic vector was a very handy tool to recite and remember, and going with music. Because in poetry, you have beautiful sound and rhythm. So it makes it easy to remember and nicer to listen to. It's a long oral narrative, a poetic one, on a grand scale, a lofty manner, hyperbolic similes. Do you understand what simile is? Simile is a comparison, a symbol. Epics tend to settle a stable form of a language. So many languages started really with epics. It sort of channeled an accepted form of speaking. Epics are linked with ethnic groups, later nations. Oral long narratives such as epics may be put into writing at a later stage only, you see. We do not know about Homer epics, the Iliad and Odyssey. We do not know when it really started. What we know that it would be put in writing only at least 5 or 6 centuries after the creation. And there's also another phenomenon, that epics do not have a fixed form until they are written down. They may travel and circulate. Now, we are going to speak about the pictures. Yes. Now, do you see well this picture? Here we have 2 men fighting. One is Hector, a Trojan, and one is Ulysses. And in the background we have the famous horse of Troy. In wood, by the way. Now, do you see here an arrow in the heel of the hero? There is, even in English, when you talk about the weakness of somebody, you say, this is his Achilles heel. Heels of Achilles. Why? Because Achilles was a son of Venus, and she wanted her son to be immortal. So when he was born, she dipped it into the Styx, a river of eternity, but she had to hold him by the foot, you know. So he was not totally immune, and the enemies, they knew that. So they sent an arrow into his heel. So this is Hector, who is fighting with a spear, and you know, here you have a shield. Now in Greek and Roman epics, the shield is very much a symbolic thing. You always have a long paragraph describing the hero's shield, and the hero's shield is never a plain shield, you know, it has stories written on it. Mythology, God's protection, etc. you see here the city walls, and here the huge wooden horse built by the Greeks to deceive the Trojans. Now, you'll know about it later. Let's have some suspense. Now, this is Ulysses, the hero of the Odyssey. By the way, the word Odyssey and Ulysses is the same. It's the same word. So Ulysses here, you see, he is in a boat, he is navigating, and these creatures, these bad creatures, they are strange women with, wings, and they have such a beautiful song that they are leading astray the seafarers. And they take them straight to the rocks, straight to catastrophe. So Ulysses knew that. So he told his crew, tie me to the mast. I want to listen to the song, but I can resist. So tie me to the mast so that I cannot anymore direct the boat. And you see the boat is being directed by another man governing the boat here. And all of the men, they have their ears tapped with I don't know what. So they are well protected and they row. So this is one of the most famous episodes of the Odyssey. So in brief, the Iliad, Ilion is the ancient word of Troy. So the Iliad, the D at the end, Iliados, is just an adjective derived from Ilion, Troy. So the Iliad is about the war of Troy, and the Odyssey is about Ulysses coming back to his country on his boat with his fleet, by the way, and a very, very difficult voyage full of adventures. So much for it. Now this is a portrait of Ulysses. He has here, he is more or less a captive of an enchantress. You see, he is oblivion of his mission. Now again the picture I mentioned earlier. So here is the fall of Troy, which is being sacked and burnt down by the Greeks after they invaded the city through a huge horse full of warriors. So Aeneas here, you see, he is fleeing the city, and here is his son, who is going to be the eponym ancestor of the Roman emperors. So says the legend. And this is his father. And he is carrying the gods of the city. So he saves whatever he can. What about his wife? Well, unfortunately, she died in the fire. So this is very handy because she hasn't got a big role in the story. But we'll know about some women warrior. There is a woman warrior in the Aeneid. So this is the beginning of the story, or of the myth, if you like. And this myth is present in so many Greek or Roman vases, or potteries. It's everywhere. You see, again, he's here. Here you see his wife. She's back. And he's carrying his child and father. Here. He's heavily loaded. Am I clear? Yes? Please note down if you, I'm expecting from you some questions. You should please stop me when we do have a pause, and also at the end of the second lecture.
We don't have polls, we just
Oh.
stop around 11:45.
Okay, then
And then questions.
then questions. All right. So allow me to. So epics are not to be dissociated. They are not to be separate from mythology, because the gods they intervene at every moment. The gods, they are in heavens, Swarga, and they look at the poor humans and say, oh, my son is winning. Oh, my son is losing, So they will ask the Jupiter, Zeus, please give a hand, if he will. Now, I'm just taking just a small precision I wanted to give is, however epics, narratives, martial and heroic as they may be, they are not deprived of love stories. It's a necessity after all, because if you want to retain people's attention, you have to give something else. And besides, it's a human reality. So they are not deprived of lyric passages, and love stories and love dramas do happen. Even the long Christian epics, that is the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, is epics. Initially it was motivated by his love, by the poet's love for a woman, and his life was given direction by his spiritual love for Beatrice Portinari, who died very early, and he dedicated most of his poetry and his epics, Divina Commedia, to that lady. And I would like to recap about some very, very famous epics. So, Homer we hardly know anything about Homer. Later on, I might tell you a strange idea about the very name of Homer. The Trojan War and the Odyssey, Ulysses' voyages and adventures, around 800 before Christ, 800 BC. In Greek, the language is Greek, and the Iliad has 24 books or songs, because naturally it was sung long before it was written, as I said earlier. Virgile, we know his full name, you know. Virgile was his first name. The little Virg. Because they would have nicknames. So that was the nickname for a boy. Publius, the son of the people. Virgilius is his name, father's name. And Maro, we do not know exactly the name of that northern Italy nobility. We do not know. So these are the voyage and the adventures of Aeneas, the Aeneid, in Latin, inspired by the former. He was inspired by Homer. He even integrated entire parts of the Odyssey into his Latin poem. So the Aeneid has 12 books, libri. Libri is the plural of Latin librum, book, including the fall of Troy, the tragic love of Dido and Aeneas, and the long battles led by Aeneas for the conquest of Italy. This is my summary, more or less. Dante Alighieri, why do I bring it? I bring it because when I was, I think 13, in my college we had an Italian professor. College means secondary school. I think I was 12 or 13. So the principal said that in my school we shall have, those are 1962, we shall have as many European languages as we can. So we young boys, there were no girls with us anyway, so we wouldn't have any rest. See, when we wouldn't study Latin, mathematics, history, and God knows what. I think God does know what. And then we would go to other languages classes. For example, Spanish was a current language that we would learn at school. And then all of a sudden, the principal says that whoever does not study Portuguese will never have a good mark in any discipline. So we all went to Portuguese. And then he recruited an Italian professor who used to be teaching French in our school. And he said, well, teach the boy about Dante Alighieri. And there goes our Thursday. In those days, Thursday was a school holiday. So no Thursday for us, Italian and Latin. Latin with the priest. So that's why I have intimate knowledge of Dante Alighieri. And I have never dropped it. So La Divina Commedia, Italian is a language derived from Latin, but they have a speciality, a phonetic speciality. Just like Tamil, they do not like simple consonants. They want always double consonants. So commedia becomes commedia. Republic becomes repubblica. So the La Divina Commedia in Italian is a Christian epic. Oh, no more a pagan epic. Well, that is to be seen. Partly inspired by the former, he wrote that in 1321 in Italian, and that was the first ever major literary work written in Italian. And it was a political move. It was a political move against the church, who would impose Latin everywhere. And Dante Alighieri had some problems with his birthplace, for that. He took his revenge. So it had three major songs or divisions: Inferno, Purgatorio, Paradiso. Hell, Purgatory, Paradise. Perhaps you do not know words. You may know or have a faint idea of what hell might be. Not a nice place anyway. Purgatory is supposed to be, in Christian theology, you see, when you die, your soul appears before God. Have you been good or not? Well, oh, you don't know. So you are not very sure of it. So go to a special place that is neither hell, neither purgatory, neither hell, neither paradise. In Greek it was called limbo. So here you will spend some time until you are cleared of your sins. That may be long. And paradise is, of course, the state of bliss. You are reunited with God, if you deserve it. Now, a very strange thing is, you see, Dante Alighieri imagined that he is taken down to the hells to visit the dead. Now, visiting the dead is a classical theme of classical epics. You visit your ancestors. But who shall be his guide? Virgile. Because Dante Alighieri knew, of course, the Aeneid very, very well. So Virgile guides the poet until he meets again the soul of his former lover, Beatrice. And then she helps him to go to paradise. So Virgile guides the poet Dante in his going down to hell. Helen of Troy and her lover Paris are seen by the poet narrator in the hell. That is, in a way, condemning a love that was illicit. But between the lines, Dante Alighieri says, oh yes, I was right to be in love with that famous lady. Of course, he cannot say that openly. Now, Louis de Camões. I shall tell you in detail about his biography because it is a very important one, mostly for Asia, and I would say unfortunately, because it was the beginning of colonialism and a very bloody one. So Luís de Camões was the author of Os Lusíadas. Now, a word about Lusíadas. Os is article. It means the, plural, masculine, plural article. By the way, Latin had no article. Greek had. Just like Arabic. Os Lusíadas in Portuguese was a long poem. It was written and mostly composed in India. 1568 is the date when he presents it to the king, Portuguese king John III. So the main hero is Vasco da Gama, Portuguese admiral. I say admiral, some people would say conqueror, some people would say also massacrer in chief. So, colonial wars were terrible. But in those days, it was seen as a national glory. Defeating the enemy is always a national glory. And the Portuguese would justify their enterprise, colonizing enterprise, as fighting Islam, which was very wrong, by the way, because most of the people they fought were also not only Hindus and Muslims, but also Christians. So that is partly inspired by the Aeneid. It is no more a Greco-Roman epics, but it has a very strong influence. Mythology, Roman and Greek mythology are almost at every page. Now, why Lusíadas? Luso, L-U-S-O, Luso, L-U-S-O, was supposed to be the first ever man in Portugal. So he was supposed to be the father of all Portuguese. Well, we cannot dispute that. So the Lusíadas is the epics that recounts not only the conquest of Asia, but also the history of Portugal in the beginning. Mostly it is about the battles and the navigation done by Vasco da Gama. And that was partly inspired by the Aeneid. And of course, Luís de Camões knew Latin very well. He didn't know Greek, but he knew some Arabic. He had even lost one eye in northern Africa in a battle. He has this common point with the great Spanish writer Cervantes, who also knew quite well Arabic. So, Os Lusíadas were written in 1568. They are divided in 10 songs, canto primeiro, canto segundo, etc. Just a word about Portuguese as a Latin language. Portuguese is very close to Spanish, but it differs in some aspects. First of all, the phonology of Portuguese is quite different from the phonology of Spanish, to that extent that they sometimes have a difficulty at understanding each other. Or they might mix, like it happens in Brazil with the Spanish-speaking Latin America countries. They call it Portuñol, a mixture of both. They have perhaps 70% or 80% common vocabulary, but written in a slightly different way, and also with a huge gap in phonetics. And in poetry, it does matter, of course. So the last one we will be dealing with is o vaticínio do Swarga. Vaticínio in Portuguese means prophecy, telling what will happen ahead. And Swarga is, of course, the heavens, the seats of the gods. Now, this was the prophecy of the Hindu heavens by Ave Kletu Afonso. He is an Indian from Goa. His native language is Portuguese, which doesn't mean at all that he would be a Christian. He is actually a Hindu. But his language is Portuguese. And he had the fantastic idea of rewriting the Lusíadas. He wrote the counterpart, the Indian counterpart of the Lusíadas. Therefore, Roman and Greek mythology is replaced by Hindu mythology. And it is written in 2013, and long after Camões, of course. And it's a direct response to the end of Portuguese rule in Asia. So it is politically motivated, of course. Can you see here, there is a tilde above the O. That means nasal. One of the major difference between Portuguese and Spanish phonetically is they have so many nasals. For example, mine is mother, mão is hand. Spanish, madre, mano. See, this, if you don't know about, you just might not understand. And also the aperture of vowels are very different. Avô is my grandfather. Avó is my grandmother. Spanish, abuelo, abuela. Sometimes we have a great discrepancy between these two languages. And because Spain and Portugal, they had, between brother nations, you have, I would say, brotherly wars and difficult relations. Portugal was dominated by Spain for 60 years after Camões. 60 years. And this is a thing the Portuguese never forgot. So their language developed more distant, in a more distant way from Spanish. For a long time, before the Spanish domination, you see, there was no clear difference between Spanish and Portuguese. After the Spanish domination, after a hard war of reconquest, then the divide is definitive. So, Now let us talk about mythology. Am I clear? Yes? You may sleep later. So will I. I said that there is no epics without mythology, simply because supernatural forces are supposed to move the events. They are supposed to even act in the guise of the heroes. Venus or Zeus, the main god, may appear in the guise of a warrior, etc. So the gods are very, very important in mythology. Now here I have gathered a few pictures of, I would say, important gods. We call it Greco-Roman mythology. I would like to say a few words about the relationship of Greek and Roman culture. We have a French say, "Je t'aime, moi non plus." I love you, me neither. So there was a kind of love-hate relationship all along between the Greeks and the Romans. First of all, before the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire was very important, made of several Greek kingdoms and republics all around the Mediterranean, even in northern Africa, even in Italy. So it was the dominant power until the Roman navy power and army power came to being. Then, you see, in 68 BC, Rome was already firmly established in Italy against the Greek, against the Gauls, against us, by the way, and they had internal wars for the conquest of internal power. They had a civil war, and the Greek, who had been defeated by the Romans, they took the wrong side, you know. And Julius Caesar, who won the civil wars, then you see he ordered the sack of Athens, even his predecessors also. So the Greeks and Athens, the most famous Greek city, was burnt to ashes by the Romans, except some monuments, except the temples, because they were needing them. So there was always bad blood between the Greeks and the Romans. But in reality, you see, the conquerors, the Romans, they were conquered by the vanquished people, because the Greek philosophy, the Greek way of writing, even the Greek alphabet, had become so famous all over. Arabic was written in Greek for many centuries, for example. So the Romans, in order to dominate their coming empire, they assimilated Greek culture and religion and mythology. So we do have a kind of compromise between Roman culture and Greek culture. And among Roman aristocracy, it was, of course, fashionable to learn not only Latin literature, but also Greek literature, even if you were a general. knowing Greek. On the other way, in Roman law, it was forbidden to use Greek as a political or judicial language. There was a very famous lawyer, Cicero. You must have heard of Cicero, an orator and a lawyer by trade. When he was 80, more or less my age, 1 year, I'm 2 years younger, he learned Greek because that was still fashionable. And he made a big mistake while he was in Sicily, that island south of Italy. He pleaded in Greek in front of the court, which was absolutely taboo. And he had a big problem with the Roman justice. So there was a difficult relationship between the two cultures, but they would need each other. Therefore, mythology, Greco-Roman, I called it Greco-Roman mythology, is a blend between local Latin religion and tradition and Greek philosophy and Greek theology. It's a blend. As a result of it, in the whole of Roman Empire, you would have temples and schools using Greek philosophy and literature all over. So mythology was a powerful tool to reflect on the reality of life and history. You see, mythology would just give you some keys, easy keys to understand destiny, to understand the creation of the world, etc. But you needed gods to have, I would say, supernatural forces. Now, this is Apollon. Apollo in Latin, Phoebus in Latin also, Phoebus. Phoebus is written P-H-O with E, B-U-S, Phoebus. So Phoebus is the Latin word for the sun, the god of sun, Surya. So this is Apollon. Apollon is also the protector of the arts. And that's why he is holding a lyra, like Surmandal. This is my favorite, Mercury, the god of commerce. By the way, he is also the god of the thieves. He is the messengers of the gods. So he has wings here in his heels. He has wings, and his hat also has wings. And he was not only messenger, but he is also a healer, god of medicine. Mixtures, very strange. So healing was a message from the gods. So this is his stick. Here we have an eagle. So anyway, he flies. And here it is two Sams. Sam, the animal, two fighting Sams. Because Sams were, of course, providing poison, but just like here also, they were also providing anti-poison. This is the caduceus. It is called caduceus, and it is now in Europe the emblem of medicine doctors. So much for Mercury. Now the Greek name of Mercury is Hermes. Hermes. It is the same word, but it would be a bit difficult to explain. Now we come back to Athens. Athenae. She is the goddess of and the protector of Athens, the city. She was supposed to have been born straight out of Jupiter's head, fully armed. She was born fully armed with a helmet and a spear. What a lady! And here she has a shield, of course, but her best shield is her breast. They are full of snakes. Oh yes, when I was talking, yeah, we have snakes here also. She has also snakes. And you see the spear, her helmet, and she has a toga, a long dress, and of course she is the goddess protector of the cities, of the Greek city, Athens. She is also supposed to be the goddess of intelligence, because she was born out of Jupiter's head. She is an inspiring goddess. One thing I forgot to say, that every god has a vehicle, an animal to carry him. You see? Ganesh has a rat. And Apollon, he has a chariot with horses. He has horses. Oh, Mercury, he is his own vehicle because he has wings, you know. Zeus or Jupiter. Jupiter is Jovis, the father. Jovis Pater, the father of all the gods. Jovis is the same as Zeus, though it may not be obvious. So he is the father of the gods, he is the general, he is the head, he is sitting above everybody. And his vehicle is an eagle. And that figure of the eagle has been held by the Roman Empire. You know, the Roman armies, they would have eagles as a symbol, a conquering symbol. Theoretically, every god has a consort, but sometimes it doesn't work. You know, marriages, well. Jupiter had Juno, but he has many problems with Juno because Jupiter is not a faithful husband at all. At all. So you see, he disguised himself into an eagle or into any animal, you know, in order to seduce women on earth. Yes. Yes. So this is Jupiter and Juno. Here we have the couple. This is again Mercury. You see, he is announcing a message here. Now Eros, Cupido. Cupido is the son of Venus, the goddess of love. Venus in Greek is Aphrodite, and strangely enough, Cupido is the son of Venus and Mars, the god of war. There is an explanation to it, but I'm not willing to go into it. later on perhaps. Now Cupido, you see, he is supposed to be a child with wings. He flies and he has a bow. And whoever he chooses to seduce, tir, an arrow. Huh? So you can, I don't know if this is very clear. Here is his bow and there is his arrow. If I was bad, but I'm not, I would ask you to name them. That will come after. How much time do I have left? Half an hour. So there is still food for thought. Now I would like to reflect a bit more on mythology and give you some, if I have time enough, is this big enough? Yes? Why to study mythology? After all, you could say, well, there are so many other things in life. Well, about a myth. A myth is a narrative, mostly symbolic and first orally transmitted, that intends to explain the origins of the world or of a nation. Myths have always been based on truth, historical or not, by the way. And allow me to sit for a moment. Long forgotten facts or deeds by extraordinary characters, heroes, cannot be recorded without some logics. An oral composition that pleases the ear, poetry, and divine intervention is also necessary to explain destiny of heroes and ultimately destiny of man and women. Mythology is a set of divine and heroic narratives, myths, that belongs to a country or a region of the world. It may also be understood as the study of particular myth. Before they are fixed in a definite literary form, myth may vary greatly. You see, there is no fixed form of myth. They circulate. Even if you write them down, they carry on circulating. It's a very important point to remember. And there is also new mythology, particularly through cinema. Before they are fixed in a definite literary form, myth may vary greatly from one region to another, or from one historical narrative to another according to national bias. Now, mythology may also be understood as a study of peculiar set of myth and representation of divine forces and characters. In particular, Greco-Roman mythology, we are concerned with here, is important to know for European cultures at large. Greco-Roman mythology is originally a blend, like I explained before, is originally a blend of Greek mythology and religion with Roman local gods. Because of the prestige of Greek philosophy, art and culture that were present in Italy long before the foundation of Rome, you see, it is an inherent part of Roman mythology. Why to study mythology? Indeed, in the present case, that is Greco-Roman mythology, the whole of Europe that was once dominated by the Roman Empire, including some parts of northern Africa, has this common cultural heritage, often blended with Catholicism or Christianity. You see, the expansion of Christianity was first through the expansion of Roman Empire. So there was very often a compromise between Greek and Roman mythology and the local Christian sense. I would take a very known example. Saint Martin was a Roman soldier in the Eastern Europe. He came to France, what is actually France now. He said, you know, he was a Roman soldier, well dressed, and he's said to have been converted, particularly when he saw a very poor man naked in the cold. So he said to have taken his sword and cut his mantle, his coat into two. You know, he kept part of it. That was cold. And give the other half to the poor man. And then legend has it that he understood Christ's message. Now, Martin was a soldier, and Mars was the god of war. And Martin is just derived from Mars. So you see, the Christian legend would be even more acceptable that way. And there are many other examples, but I'll try to find some others, maybe for tomorrow. So, more precisely, since the 16th century cultural renaissance of Europe, classical Greek and Roman literature came back after some rejection of traditional hagiography. Hagiography, not to confuse with geography. Hagios in Greek means saint. So hagiography is the history of the saints. In Latin, we call it Flos Sanctorum. So, in Middle Ages, literature was dominated by the history of the saints, of Christian saints. But then, you know, we had the fall of Constantinople after the Turks conquered Constantinople. And southern Italy was flooded with Greek philosophers and artists. And all of a sudden, you know, there was an appeal to save this Roman and Greek culture and to go back to it, even being Christian, like the modern Greeks had been doing. And also, you see, Protestant skepticism is important. At the end of 16th century, there is a movement, a protest against the overall domination of Catholic Church. Catholic Church was dominating everywhere, you know. They were dominating every day's activity and preserving taxes also, taxing people. So many intellectuals, they started thinking that after all, why don't we come back to the Bible, you know, and get rid of the cult of the saints, and get rid of the domination of the priest, because you see, the Catholic Church would make it a privilege of reading the Bible. If you were a simple Catholic person, you could not have direct access to the Bible. That was only through the priest. And Protestant people, bourgeois people mostly, you know, they wanted to have free access to the holy books. And they wanted to have a simpler religion without taxes, etc. You know, the financial aspect was also important. So we have a kind of rejection of the Catholic, I would say, literature, traditional history of the saints, and coming back to the Bible and also to Greek and Latin philosophy as a help to understand Bible. Many Greek artists and intellectuals took refuge in Italy and Spain after the fall of Constantinople. For example, there was a great Greek painter, Dominicos Theotokopoulos, known as El Greco in Spain. He was a refugee from Constantinople, and he introduced a very modern vision of Christ, very different one. You see, and a simpler one, and I would say with preference to quoting the Bible in Greek. So that threatened more or less the Catholic traditions. But he was so good that he sort of imposed his views. So the movement was very important, particularly in poetry in mid-17th century, with the advent in mid-16th century, with the advent of sonnets. Sonnet was coming from Sicily with some Arabic influence as to the use of rhyming system. You know, in Latin poetry, there was no such a thing as rhyme, like there is in Urdu, by the way. And still in classical English poetry, there is rhythm, but no rhyme at the end of verses. So, sonetto in Italy used to be the little song, little music. Son is sound, music, sonetto, little music. And that was a new form of poetry. It became very much fashionable after the Spaniards conquered Sicily. Sicily had been a dual culture, Arabic and Latin, for a few centuries. So sonetto became the fashion. And in sonetto, you would have lots of Roman and Greek mythology that was very, very important in Sicily anyway. So through poetry, mythology, in 16th century came back heavily. And also we have Camões with the Lusíadas. In Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, and later on in English, though without rhyming, sonnet would make great use of Greco-Roman mythology. But the movement went into music and painting. You see, but the movement went into music and painting with more and more use of pagan mythology instead of episodes from the New Testament. Now I have little time. Tomorrow I'll come back to it. But we need pictures. Now, I do not know whether this is clear enough. Can't we?
On your system you can see this picture. It's available.
No, I don't want that. Yes, if you close the lights. Yes. Yes. Now, this is a very recent discovery in Pompeii. This is supposed to be Aeneas and Dido, the queen of Carthago. I will tell you tomorrow about their love story. But you see, this is in the wall of a Roman villa, 1st century after Christ, and it has been very recently discovered. Now this is a 17th century picture. The internet source says German, which is totally wrong because it was Dutch. What is left of my family is now in Amsterdam since 10 years. So I have been to the museums in Amsterdam countless times with my granddaughters. I think they are now getting wary of it. So you cannot fool me. You see, Jan van den Hoek is a typical Dutch name. So this is Dido and Aeneas around 1635. So Dido, the queen of Carthago, is the unfortunate love of Aeneas. She committed suicide when she left her, when he left her. Just to comment it, you see, they were having a hunt, and all of a moment, the gods decided that Dido and Aeneas should have a love affair because Venus was against the founding of Italy. So Dido was supposed to stop him of going to Italy. So they have a big storm. Jupiter makes a big storm to force the hunting party to take refuge into a cave. By accident, both of them, they found refuge from the rain and storm in the same cave. You know, things happen. Well, and but that was a short-lived love. And the comment says, and I do not agree with the comment, Allegory der Vergänglichkeit, about the transitoriness, the ephemerality It is actually ephemerality of love. This is what is supposed to be. But actually, the painter, the Dutch painter, he was commended by the rich bourgeois of Amsterdam. They wanted beautiful paintings for their assembly hall. And, the Aeneid was fashionable. So that's it. Now I have finished. Yeah? Do we have time for questions?
It's 11:31. We can have questions now.
Yes?
20 minutes.
Yes?
Continue for 10 minutes.
I should continue for 10 minutes? All right. With pleasure. With pictures. I want to come back to this. You see, particularly poetry in mid-16th century, with the advent of sonnet coming from Sicily with some Arabic influence as to the use of rhyming system in Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, and later in English, though without rhyming. Sonnet would make great use of Greco-Roman mythology, born in Sicily. Sicily is full of statues, temples, you name it, mosaics. You just cannot walk. There's a Greek statue. Oh, a Roman one. I exaggerate a bit, but it is true. But the movement went into music and paintings. For example, in music, we have a very famous English opera, Dido and Aeneas. I forgot the author. Well, that is something for you to look for. 17th century, anyway. And the love of Dido and Aeneas has been the motive of many tragedies, dramas, you name it. The movement went into music and paintings with more and more use of pagan mythology instead of episodes from the New Testament, the Catholic Bible, though those did not disappear from churches, but with a different sense of realism. You would have life of saints represented very similar with episodes from Greek mythology. There was a blend of it, particularly in what is called the Baroque movement. Later on, during the 17th century, Greco-Roman mythology grew stronger on the stage, and collecting antiques, Greco-Roman statues and money, etc., became fashionable, starting from the Pope himself in Rome. You see, the Pope was supposed to be the head of the Catholic Church, and he was supposed to be also an Italian prince. In those days, he had a big kingdom within Italy. And the Italian prince would, of course, have his collection of antiques. And the Museum of Vatican is full of so many beautiful statues. Some of them later on were declared indecent. And the church had a problem with them. They would put a plaster leaf over some parts of the body. So Greco-Roman statues, monies, etc., kings all over Europe, they started collecting it. It became fashionable. Going to Rome and Italy to be inspired by antique ruins and models became a must for painters. There should be an S here. Oh. During the 18th century, the discovery of Pompeii under volcanic ashes settled the mythological fashion for pieces of furniture and even personal wear. You see, the story of porcelain is quite a fascinating one. It started in China in 13th century. In 14th century, the Chinese dynasty was looking for expansion of its goods and exporting porcelain, even including to India, became a way for the Chinese emperor of gaining wealth. All of a sudden, they stopped. I mean, we cannot reflect on it. But with newly coming British and French colonialism in 18th century, porcelain became again fashionable, and the Chinese porcelain maker, they started making porcelain with motifs agreeable to the foreigners. No more Buddhist, you know. They would have flowers, birds, etc. And then when porcelain went into Europe, at the end of 18th century, mythology was the main inspiring theme for porcelain. So knowing mythology is very, very important to understand history of art, history of literature, and also, what about astronomy? You know, names of the planets, they are from Greco-Roman mythology. I mean, at least in Europe and America. So now I'm ready for questions.
Sir, I have observation.
Maybe we can have lights now.
You said like there is no epic in French language, but there is an epic of the Song of Roland written by Cleon, I think 11th century.
Yes, nobody can understand it.
So it is
It was not yet French, first of all. It was not yet French.
Is it an epic poem or?
It is an epic poem, quite a bad one as far as I can remember. But it is said to be French, but that was between Latin and French, and more in a German way than a French way. Because it is there in the supposed to be history of French literature. But to my mind, this is more akin to Latin than French.
It is also the origin of Portuguese literature. A lot of romance.
Well, I wouldn't say that, because it was unknown for such a long time. You know, it did not travel. It did not travel.
In the history of Portuguese literature, they trace their origin.
Well, that is totally wrong. Totally wrong, because you see, the people like to have nice ancestors. Yes. But there is no definite proof that either Spanish or Portuguese literature were ever linked with that story. You know. And they wouldn't even quote it.
Maybe we can talk about Franciade in the context of.
Yes, Franciade was another failure. a bigger failure, I would say. It was supposed to be an epics written for the former French King Francis I. And because of religious wars, it was never finished and never really adopted. In the little town where I stay, there is supposedly the house of the author of Franciade. Nobody knows him, by the way. And that was a total failure.
That's also yet, but the reason why he was writing, that is an important point.
Yes, the reason was to please the king, and yes, you are very right. To please the king at the moment where, you see, the king was prisoner in Spain also. But it didn't catch up. It was not and is not anywhere part of the cursus in French literature.
It is not even complete.
Yeah, it is not even complete. Yes, we have been, the French have been very unfortunate with epics, which is not the case of Spanish, which is not the case of, Spanish is a special case because the best Spanish epics I know is La Araucana. That later on. More questions, please. Yes, please.
Sir, in mythology, what are the characteristics on the base how we decide that this person is the hero of the epic?
Sorry, can you explain? Can you say it again?
Sir, in mythology, when we read epic,
Yeah.
how do we decide that this character is the hero?
That is for the gods to decide. You see, heroes, they personify a country, a people, or even a natural phenomenon. So it is a way of explaining antique history. So the poet chooses a hero to explain a historical fact, to explain the birth of the nation, or to explain natural phenomenon. So it's just a trick. It's and I would say it is sometimes it's quite difficult to say that so and so is author of such myth. It's also a common creature, a common creation. People agree, the story goes on developing, and everybody might have another hero, or the hero might change his name, change his nature, etc. So it depends on who sings the story. The artist is very often at liberty to change the myth. But for that, people should adhere. So he has to keep with some cliches. The hero should be a semi-god at least, or of godly origins. Did I answer?
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
I thought it's something, so actually I will not ask any question. When I was in college, sir, we have read Dante's...
When you were in college?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm from Turkey. Then
Yeah.
we were educating Turkish literature.
Yes,
When I was in college, especially the Dante's Divine Comedy.
yes.
We have read this work. It
Yeah.
was very interesting. And especially that part, neither Jannat or Jahannam, like hell or...
Yeah, Jahannam.
Yes.
Yes, Jinnat Jahannam. Yes, I
That
know.
was a part that we call this Araf, that place.
Yeah.
Because these people, these spirits, they are waiting to release their soul, and they will be decided, they will choose. They will be going Jannat, that
Paradise.
paradise or hell.
Yeah.
These sites are especially, we match this historically based upon prophet life.
Mm.
And there is a story that Miraj, prophet, he reaches to
I know Miraj Name. Yes.
yes, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
In Miraj Name, it's also explained, but also according to Islamic knowledge.
Mm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
prophet goes with Jibreel, with that biggest angel who brings that wahi
Yeah,
knowledge
yes, yes,
from
yes.
Allah to reach to Allah level, and there are 7 felek. We call this felek 7 level.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
In Dante's Divine Commedia,
Yes. There are also 7
Yes.
circles.
yes,
Yes. You know, we have had quite a few doctoral theses about the Arabic literature influence within Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy. And he acknowledged it. He acknowledged.
Did he read or not, it's not
He was well aware of it. Well aware of it. Because since the Crusades, you know, there was a movement to try to say that the true religion is Christianity. And of course, they would say, yes, Islam has also the idea of one God. We have, you know, common points. So Dante was very much aware of it, and that was his way of telling the Catholic Church that is be more universal, you know. Yeah. He was criticized for that,
yes, and
but he was so successful.
yes, sir, because it's elaborate also. There are some symbols, but sir, that hell part, he was putting especially the prophet to ninth hell, the worst one, because of division, and especially also Hazreti Ali, because of that, you know, conflict.
Yeah, yes. You see, Paradise Lost by Milton has also this concept
This
of hell.
concept is there in Greek also.
Yes, sir.
Even the description of when Virgile he goes to hell,
Yes,
what is written on the hell is so much Greek.
of course, of
and
course.
from Virgile also.
Yes, of course.
So you did it, sir, Christian,
You see,
Christian perspective.
in all great European myths, epics, you have a going down to hell. So Ulysses goes to hell also, and so does Aeneas, you know,
Description also like this, sir.
and description
Your
of hell.
relation to,
Yeah, and meeting also meeting their ancestors, meeting their ancestors.
This is what the humanity we always study on the hell of anabasis and katabasis. Yes.
the underworld.
So going to underworld and coming from underworld.
Yep.
It's very dominant in any epic tradition of yours.
Yeah. Yes. Another question, please. One, because excuse me, but
Yes, Prashant.
So we had this story about the origins of Homer's name.
sorry, speak louder.
Something to say about the origin of Homer's name.
Romans.
Homer's name.
Homer. Oh yes. Well, that is a stupid idea of mine. Some Greek names are very close to Arabic. And I thought of Omer like Umar, the elder. Well, that is just a stupid hypothesis. Just a funny one, I would say. But coincidences are very funny. You see, etymology is a difficult sport. If you don't have something written, you cannot prove anything. So that was just a silly remark of mine. just no importance. Yes, please.
Sorry, we mentioned
No, 1 second. Yes.
I mean, I was
Make it quick because.
who goes first?
You just make it brief.
Yeah.
You are the first.
I have a simple question. What is the importance of writing epic this time? I mean, in this century.
Sorry?
Importance of epic in 21st
I
century.
mean, writing of epic.
Yeah.
You mentioned like there is a epic of Ithnis to Sarga in 1813. You know,
21st century.
so 21st. What's the importance of writing epic in this century?
It is constantly,
modern
you see, epics and mythology are constantly recycled by cinema, for example. It means big money, very big money. Secondly, in modern science, mythology is reused, you see, and not as an explanation, but just as a simple label. It comes handy. And also, I do not think that modern art has totally abandoned mythology. Look at Picasso. Picasso reproduced also mythology, but in a very indirect way. Like the Minotaur, you know, the man that was half a bull, half a man. So modern painting does not ignore mythology either. Technology, modern technology uses mythology as a, I would say, as a label.
Statue of Liberty.
Statue of Liberty, yes. She never finished her ice cream. Yes.
Even now epics are being created in all possible oral forms.
Yes, yes. In politics, they are very much used, you
I
know.
think this is also the basic human demands is to know something about distance in time and place.
Yes,
So when it is recycled, it satisfies that demands.
yes, yes.
That is one. The other, which is often missed in India, is that it is a political narrative which is being created.
Yes, yes.
Epic is predominantly a political narrative.
Yeah. In any case, all authors of epics, they had a sort of intimate link with the prince or with the emperor whatsoever. Virgile, we'll come back to it tomorrow. You know, Virgile is supposed to have been approaching the Roman emperor court, and he had to make a good living. So his poems pleased the emperor. He got lots of money out of it. In return, parts of the Aeneid are directly praising the emperor. You see, we were told about the Greek and Roman disagreement, you know, and sort of see the Roman emperors, they were not at ease with the Greek heritage, because that was somehow difficulting their prestige, you see. So of course they would say, yes, Greek culture is very important, but on the other side, well, Roman culture has it. So writing the when Virgile starts to write, the Roman Empire is being created, and they need a political theory that would say that Roman culture is supreme. So the revenge of the loss of Troy is a kind of, kind of repeating the humiliation of Greece by the Roman army. Inserting, again the idea of supreme power being Roman. So that is a very key problem, a very key solution to the Aeneid, the motives. Yes, please.
Sir, you say about this political dimension of mythology, but also
Of epics, epics.
Yeah, I'm sorry, epics. But at the beginning you talk about myth as another way of telling truth.
Yes.
So in that sense also, for example, the Neoplatonic philosophers, they took the epic of Homer as a kind of inspired poet, kind of as a source of truth.
Yes, as an explanation.
So
Yeah, as a useful symbol.
in that sense, it's not just this political or,
It serves in Greek, during the Greek supremacy, of course, it was also a philosophical tool.
even in Plato we see
Yes,
that.
yes, of course. It's very, very important. Very important, you are right.
And what do you think, because in the sense of the literature nowadays, this poetic element is very related with this kind of necessity of myth.
Yes.
How we can just, it's not rationality, it's just
Yes.
the only thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
The only problem is that the modern day productions, maybe the oral productions like cinema, etc., they require huge money. And the money is the problem. That's why you see when we go from Christian myths to the pagan stories, why this shift?
Money is very important. Yes.
Money is important.
But
Present day it is money is important.
no, but even in Virgile's time, money was important. For example, because he was in disagreement with the power, with the local government, governor in Cisalpina, in northern Italy, he was threatened to be deprived of the properties he had inherited from his mother. And then a way of regaining the property was to gain the emperor favor, to curry the emperor's favor. So in that way, not only did he get lots of money, he also kept his family house and properties. So the material motivation is never far. Same is the case with Camões. Camões was totally penniless when he came back to Portugal. And he rewrote and, came to the court with his newly written book. And then he had some money. It's not only political, but also, you see, writers and poets, they had to sing the praise of the prince in order to survive. Yeah.
Yes, of course. But it's not only that, because
Of course.
Virgile is
Of course
an
it.
amazing poet.
Yeah.
The disciple of Messias was
Yes.
not just,
Yes.
very straight. just
But who decides?
alone.
Who decides it's good or bad?
Well, of Well, the thing